Hello, I'm Reged Ahmed with BBC World News. Our top stories. A new offensive against so-called Islamic State is set to begin in the Iraqi city of Mosul. We're on the front lines.
When these men were in the east, they experienced 56 Islamic State car bombs. So the question they are asking is, what does the Islamic State have left?
Back in campaign mode, but this time as President Trump. He addresses the crowd and repeats the promise to bring jobs back to America. A major security crackdown in Pakistan after nearly 90 people are killed in the bombing of a shrine in the south of the country. And 40 years after she gave him a cup of tea when he was living on the streets, the so-called Lady and the Tramp are getting their happy ending. Hello and welcome. Iraqi security forces are set to begin a major new offensive against the so-called Islamic State in Mosul. Iraq's second largest city was seized by the jihadist group over 2 years ago as they took control of northern and western Iraq. Now, last month, after a 12-week offensive, government forces recaptured the eastern half of Mosul, claiming to have fully liberated it. But around 750,000 civilians remain inside the west of the city, which is still controlled by the Islamic State group. From Mosul's southern front, our Middle East correspondent Quentin Somerville reports. Now, a day after the US President Donald Trump told a news conference that his administration was running like a fine-tuned machine, senior Republican Senator John McCain has said it is in disarray. His comments came after the former naval admiral chosen by President Trump to be his national security advisor turned down the job. And while the search for a new security advisor goes on, the president returned today to one of his favourite themes, talking about jobs and the American economy. Now, Mr. Trump has got through another key appointment. The US Senate has confirmed his choice to head the Environmental Protection Agency. He's Scott Pruitt, the Oklahoma Attorney General, and he was chosen in spite of concerns by Democrats and Green groups about his views on climate change and his ties to the coal and gas industry. Mr. Pruitt has sued the Environmental Protection Agency more than a dozen times over its regulations. Well, our correspondent David Willis is in Washington for us. Let's have a chat to him. David, we'll talk about Scott Pruitt in a moment, but first of all, Donald Trump has been talking at Boeing. He's expected to do a campaign-like rally tomorrow. Where is Donald Trump headed with this? What is he trying to achieve?
A question that many people here are asking, Reged. Is he campaigning for 4 years hence? What is the meaning of all this? And it's widely thought that it's part of Donald Trump's pledge to basically get his message over the heads of the established media, if you like, directly to the doorstep of the people who brought him into office. He's going to be on the campaign trail in Florida again tomorrow. It's a sort of thing, Richard, that he loves to do. He loves to get out amongst the people. He can speak off the cuff without notes. He can say precisely what's coming into his head at the time. And he has said he loves it. He clearly does embrace it. And we saw a little bit of that with the rather free-falling news conference that he gave yesterday, in which he said to the amazement of some that his administration was running like a finely tuned machine, as he put it. He also said that he had an outstanding candidate lined up for the vacant role of National Security Advisor following the departure of General Michael Flynn, who was found to have been less than totally candid with the Vice President Mike Pence. Well, indeed, he did have a very impressive candidate lined up. That man, Robert Harwood, is a former Navy SEAL. He's directed troops in both Iraq and Afghanistan. The problem is, a few hours after that news conference, he said no thank you. So now the White House is looking again to fill that most crucial role in the Trump cabinet.
We'll have to wait and see where it goes with the National Security Advisor. But Scott Pruitt has been sworn in, I believe, as head of the EPA, and there's been a lot of controversy around this choice. Do we know what he's going to now do, what his first approach to the EPA is going to be, or is it still a mystery?
Well, Scott Pruitt is probably the most controversial appointment ever to this agency. He is a man who in the past has cast doubt on climate change. He slightly changed course on that during his nomination hearing, but he is a man who has fought the very agency that he is now going to lead. And indeed, hundreds of former EPA staff wrote an open letter saying that they believe that Scott Pruitt was unqualified, that he was an extremist and he should not get the role as the man in charge of the Environmental Protection Agency. To directly answer your question, though, Regid, it basically gives Donald Trump an ally, a close ally, in his desire to increase the use the reliance on fossil fuels, coal, for example, and also somebody who will back the lifting of environmental regulations, which many Republicans, Donald Trump among them, believe have stood in the way of business in America.
David Willis in Washington, thank you as always for your analysis. Well, meanwhile, US Vice President Mike Pence is to become the latest representative to shed light on what Trump's America First policy means for the rest of the world. He will speak at the Munich Security Conference, which is currently taking place. US policy towards Russia, the Middle East and NATO are all on the table. And on NATO, the new US Defence Secretary James Mattis insisted that NATO countries shared a strong bond against instability, but he stressed the need for members to contribute their fair share. That's the new US Defence Secretary James Mattis. Now, Pakistan's security forces say they've killed dozens of suspected militants following an attack on a shrine in the south of the country in which nearly 90 worshippers died. The so-called Islamic State has claimed responsibility for yesterday's bombing, the latest in a spate of attacks. Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif says his nation is fighting a war for its very identity, as our correspondent in Islamabad, Secunda Kamani, reports. Now in other news, the American food giant Kraft Heinz says it will continue to press for a takeover deal with the Anglo-Dutch firm Unilever, despite its initial bid being rejected. The offer, which would be one of the biggest ever corporate mergers, amounted to about $140 billion, which Unilever said fundamentally undervalued its business. Spain's Princess Cristina has been cleared of tax fraud-related charges following an investigation into her husband's financial affairs. However, her husband was sentenced to over 6 years for fraud and tax evasion. And more than 300 people have broken through a fence separating the Spanish territory of Ceuta from Morocco. Most of the group are believed to be migrants from sub-Saharan Africa trying to reach the European Union. Video footage shows them using clubs and shears to create gaps in the 6-metre-high construction. Well, one woman arrested in Malaysia over the killing of the half-brother of North Korea's leader has said she was duped into thinking she was part of a comedy show prank. That's according to Indonesia's national police chief, who's been briefed by Malaysian authorities. Kim Jong-nam died after being attacked at Kuala Lumpur airport on Monday. It's believed he was poisoned. Meanwhile, North Korea has made a plea to Malaysia to release the body without delay. You're watching BBC World News. Still to come, we'll take a look at the estate in Florida where President Trump prefers to spend his weekends. This is BBC World News. I'm Regid Ahmed. The latest headlines. Iraqi security forces are due to begin a major new offensive against the so-called Islamic State in Mosul. And President Trump goes back on stump to reinforce his jobs promise that powered his election victory and pledges to unleash the power of the American spirit. Now, scientists are appealing for more people to donate their brains for scientific research after they die. In particular, they're lacking the brains of people with illnesses such as depression and post-traumatic stress disorder in order to develop new treatments. Our science correspondent Palab Ghosh has visited one of the largest brain banks in the world in Boston to learn more. The weekend is almost upon us, which means for Donald Trump, it's almost time to head down to his Florida estate, Mar-a-Lago. He's owned the lavish private club and estate for decades, but it's taken on a new prominence since he took office. It seems destined to become his #1 getaway retreat. But what's it really like? Matt Morrison takes a look. Well, a couple who have been nicknamed the Lady and the Tramp are making the final preparations for their wedding this weekend. Joan Neiniger met Ken Selway more than 40 years ago when he was sleeping rough on the streets of Gloucester, here in the UK. Our correspondent John Kay takes up their story. It's a lovely story and we wish them well. Well, Dick Brunner, the Dutch illustrator and author who created the much-loved cartoon rabbit Miffy, has died at the age of 89. And he wrote more than 30 books about Miffy's adventures, which sold over 80 million copies worldwide. The White Rabbit was created in 1955 as a story to entertain Dick Brunner's young son. That's it for now, but you can get me on Twitter. I'm at BBC Reg Ahmed. Much more on the website as well, bbc.com/news.